Hey folks, can you hear me now? Great. Well, let's see, what's new? So the new avatars are out. I see some people are checking those out already. Those went live yesterday. So that's our first avatars that are using the extended bento skeleton. So there's some horsey ones. There's some things with wings, tails and stuff. So I think I think they did a nice job with them, and hope people have fun playing around with them. Let's see, what else? Let's see, we had some discussions about content protection issues last week. As I mentioned then, it's, this isn't really the format for it, but, I will pass things along to support as they come up. But it's, I understand the concern, but I would suggest we should probably keep most of that stuff in the support framework rather than this meeting. Let's see, what else? We have, other than that, just continuing to work on the Bakes on Mesh and the animated object stuff. Let's see, the latest thing on animated objects is that we've been trying to get link sets to work correctly. You can have if you have a bunch of different prims and each prim wants to send out its own animation requests, getting all of that stuff to work correctly requires a little bit more code than what we currently had. So been poking on that lately. It seems to be coming along okay. Yeah.
I had a request with regard to the animated objects that came up with when chatting with a couple of friends. And the way we got to this request was that we were discussing that you were saying previously that you didn't want the animated objects to be able to link to your avatar because you're concerned about having two rigs. And we were discussing how to animate like if you were riding on a mount, like in an MMO or something, how to animate the rider and the mount at the same time in a way that, the two animations wouldn't get too offset so that your butt is like flying around in the air and not sitting on the thing anymore. But without sacrificing animation integrity to where it's not moving very much, because I don't know about you, but my understanding of the whole Bento project and this animated objects thing is that we want to get away from having really stiff sort of things in Second Life and be able to open up more movement like you would expect to see in other games. So we were discussing how to make it so that you can animate things together like that. And a suggestion that had come up from a friend of mine was that it might be beneficial with the animated objects to be able to animate as part of the rig the sitting point. So if you put this animated object on the ground, to be able to animate the point where an avatar would sit on it as part of an animation file might be a useful thing.
So I think currently when an avatar sits, it's actually changing. It's actually changing the parent, right? You're turning the avatar into a child object of the seat. Are you talking about actually doing that, or just sort of moving it in such a way that it looks like that's kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, I think that would involve making the avatar a child of whatever you're sitting on, so that then you would be able to control where the sitting avatar is going as part of the same animation file that's animating the NPC object.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a couple of different aspects of this, right? It's like, can you take these animated objects and have them, sit on things, and then can other things get attached to them? So you've got animated objects that want to be attachments. We've had that request, but then you could also have, they want to be seated on a chair or something like that. I think it's an interesting suggestion. If you want to file a JIRA for it, that's the kind of thing that's helpful to have on hand as we're kind of working through the various various parts of the project. The way these things usually go, as you probably recall from Bento, is that at some point you've got to draw the line between what's required for the initial release and what is going to wait for a subsequent project and get something out. But it's I do understand that there's a lot of interest in these kinds of interaction issues, and it's something that we should be looking at.
Being able to animate the object and attach it, or attach to it, or make it look like you're attached to it by attaching it to you, would kind of it'll let you do a lot more with but areas if you've got like a walking stick, you could throw it up and catch it, that kind of thing. Or you could have your mount, your shoulder pets, pets that sit on one shoulder and run around, jump in your pocket or whatever, that kind of thing. Which would be really cool.
Yeah, I think that's what we've probably had the most requests for so far is attachments for pets, so that you can have them associated with your avatar, and you can teleport with them, and that sort of thing.
Animated mounts would be pretty epic as well. Because I know a lot of people like vehicles, but they don't like the fact that really you can only res them in certain places. You can't actually go anywhere with them because most of the land isn't actually really connected. You can't teleport, you can't res it somewhere and then teleport from inside it with it to somewhere else and drive around. The animated mesh, if you were able to either attach it to you and then have something where it overrides the animations built into it, so that you're always static and it does the moving, or however it would work.
Yeah, so
but you have
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say that would give you the sort of effects of your vehicles and all that kind of coolness, while having the ability to actually make use of it.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first thought, actually, was being able to have them attach to the avatar and interact with you that way. But I feel like you had said at one point that that wasn't a direction that you felt you could go, so if you could, that would be even better as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so I mean, are you thinking about the scenario of the animated object is attached to the avatar, or the animated object kind of is the vehicle, and do you want the avatar to be able to attach to it?
Both.
Well, actually,
I mean,
I'm really sure. Go on.
I'm just trying to come up with a way by which the two objects can flawlessly interact with each other, whether that's by attaching or by sitting and being able to animate the person that is sitting on the object. Either way, I feel like would be able to work. it's just a matter of what would better integrate with the system we've already got.
Yeah, and in the case of vehicles, you know, we have some existing framework that works now for non-animated objects, right? If you've got a you know, a car or like an old style horse or something like that, then it is possible for the avatar to be seated on those, and that stuff generally behaves, right? How do you actually define what the attachment point is for that?
Well, the main problem with those is you have to res them first, which means where you can use them and what you can do with them is pretty limited.
Yeah, so with a vehicle sort of thing, like what I do with my horse avatars in order to have another avatar ride them is you would res a vehicle that both avatars would sit on, and then each one would animate independently. But the problem with that really is that Second Life just can't really be trusted to reliably play multiple animations at the same time. So then they need to be animated in such a way that the rider and the animal that you're riding, like the back of the horse and the butt of the rider, both stay more or less in the same spot. Whereas, let me find a avatar of mine really quick.
If you could specify which bone you are sitting on.
Yeah, well, what I was thinking there was like there could be a sitting bone, or maybe even just being able to animate the origin and have the origin be what you sit on. So here's a rideable mount that I created, and well, actually it's kind of staying still while I'm typing, but you see the body's kind of moving around and my butt's kind of moving around, and I'm able to do that sort of thing because the mount and the avatar are both the same animation, the same rig. But if it was two different animations playing, as if one animation playing on the rider and one animation playing on the NPC object, then you can't really create a lot of motion in which the mount is moving around and your butt is moving with the mount. They would come out of sync, and then you would have a situation where you're just kind of flying around in the air. So some means by which we can sync up interactions like that, whether it be by being able to wear the NPC objects or being able to res them and animate the sit point, or both, would be really helpful to be able to create interactions like that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, I thought about the animated object as potentially being you know, writable or whatever, but you know, which of course you can already kind of do with objects that you res, but if they are actually animated, then it makes it harder to keep things in sync. I'm trying to find the JIRA now. There was one fairly detailed proposal already that was talking about these kinds of issues, and I'm just trying to see if I can pull that up. Yeah, I apologize for the lack of whirliness. I can't look them up that fast myself. This is the JIRA. It was talking about a means of visually rigging a sitter to animated mesh skeleton bone. It's talking about some different options. The proposal here was that it was an additional LSL command that I think the idea there is that you'd be defining some kind of a constraint so that as either or both of your objects are playing their animations, you're maintaining this relationship with the designated bone or position. Well, yeah, thanks, Lucia. Just busy looking at Jira instead of at the back scroll. That's the one. Yeah, usual disclaimer about the fact that it's accepted. That's not guaranteeing we're going to do it. It's just that it's something we want to be able to refer to as a possible, and we're in the process of working on the project. Okay. So anyway, that hopefully that's open for comments currently. Okay, I just said it for needs more info, so people should be able to comment on that if they want to. That would be one place to talk about the kinds of things that you're trying to accomplish with these things, and address whether this particular proposal would cover it or not. But if people are thinking in other directions, it's fine to file additional JIRAs too. Let's see. There's a question about caching or preloading animations. Yes, I mean the way that works now is as soon as we see a request for an animation, we go and fetch it. So it's faster if we already have it in the local cache. If we've used that animation previously, and it's slower if we have to go out over the network and fetch it. And what do we have for preloading sounds? I'm not familiar with that one. Yeah, okay, so the idea would be just at the beginning of your script you would say, hey, I want to, pre-cache the following animation, names or IDs, and then it would kind of go off and do that. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, not necessarily at the state entry, but the point being that you would be kicking it off sometime before you actually needed the animation, and then would presumably be a faster process then to start playing it back. Yeah, okay, well, LL preload sound makes sense. My guess would be that that wouldn't be particularly hard to extend to other types of assets. I see there's a linked bug 7854 for preload asset for arbitrary assets. Don't know if there's any feedback on that. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. Let me take a look at that. It's probably I can see there definitely be cases where that would be useful. It may or may not fit within the framework of the animated object stuff, but we'll take a look at it. Let's see. I have a question. Is animating rigged mesh going to use the current bento skeleton? Yes, it's based on the same skeleton as avatars are, so that you have the same range of joints available. It doesn't do everything that avatars do currently, but it does include the full set of joints. Yeah, syncing animations obviously has been a problem all along. You get this, you get a bunch of different avatars that are trying to play the same animation, and then they all start as soon as the animation shows up, and you get this like sort of unplanned line dance effect, and it's kind of squirrely. Yeah, Lex, don't know what the dispo is going to be on preloading animations. I'll take a look at it. It's not something that's obviously part of the project, but if it's useful to enough people and it's not a huge deal to do it, we might look into it. Alright, I am trying to look at this Giazo link, and I'm getting kind of seasick. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be looking for there. Oh, is this the problem with the imposter box being too small and so stuff gets cut off? Yeah, okay. I know I've seen a Jira for that, but I'm not sure what happened to it. Kind of think somebody was working on it. Yeah, anyway, I'll take a look. Alright, I'm just scrolling back up now if I've missed anybody else. I had a question about returning mesh asset swap LSL function. I'm not sure I understand the question there. Vincent asked this. Oh, yeah. That was a problem in the early days of Mesh, and I don't think we would want to revisit that particular can of worms. Let's see, I had a question about where animation assets for NPCs need to be stored to be able to be played. Yeah, the way this works right now is similar to the way it works now for for mesh attachments, right, you can put an animation object inside your attachment, inside your attachments, and then reference them inside your scripts. And so that's the approach we've been using with the animated objects as well. So you can put animations inside of your animated objects, and then reference them by name in the scripts that are in those objects. Could the object use an AO? Well, I mean, the original idea with an AO is that you're overriding the default animations, right? You've got the built-in walk or stand or whatever, and you're trying to replace those. In the case of the objects, they don't play any animations by default. They only play the ones that you asked for. So, I mean, you can have a script that tells it what animations to play, but it wouldn't exactly be an AO in that sense.
Oh, but there is the pathfinding system. So, in the pathfinding system, if you look at the code and you have similar functions to how an AO would work in a way.
Yeah, I haven't really worked with the pathfinding system. How do you see that going?
Well, there are different, things that trigger an event. So, you can have something trigger just wandering, just walking around, or following something. You could trigger it to follow something. And all of these things would be, of course, linked to animation. So, in many ways, it would be a lot like an AO.
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking of an AO as kind of an object that's in charge of controlling animations, then you can certainly have those. It's just I think it would work a bit differently than what it is with the avatars today.
And I'll just point out to everybody that we didn't have an AO in Second Life either. It was made by somebody. We didn't even have AO functions until a couple years ago. So, of course, what will likely happen here is somebody will make one.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the intent here is that the the initial support for animated objects is just the first stage. And once that's out and working, we would be looking into adding more kind of NPC-like functionality, and that's where you get into things like allowing these things to have a locomotion graph the way that avatars do, to have their state actually tracked on the server side. Once you have that, then the idea of an AO is actually kind of directly comparable, and that's also the stage that we would look at things like support for baking and support for kind of wearable inventory, that sort of thing. Some of that wouldn't really make sense until we had bakes on mesh, because of course these are mesh objects, but the intent there is that we would be looking at kind of a follow-on project once we do kind of the simplest thing that works for just allowing you to animate objects initially. Yeah, and of course we have to add an LSL interface to Skynet as well.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up that, well, I don't know how to put this without offending people, but years ago, I'll say it like this. Years ago, when Pathfinding was first put out, there was all this code that was written by Linden Lab or by one of your employees. And it was a really nice code. I took, it was like code to handle like 3 or 4 different moving objects at the same time. Almost like a herd of people.
This was LSL stuff?
Right, exactly. And my point is that this was like such beautiful code, and obviously it was code to test out the pathfinding and everything like that. And I thought to myself when I was reading through the code that, you know, I'm going to come back to this when I want to work on pathfinding stuff. And eventually I did come back to it, but I never found the code again. It was almost like it was white. But my point is, though, that we, you know, Linden Lab makes all these features and everything. And in the process, we do have to test things. And it would be nice, instead of having to wait for someone in the open market to create some code for it, if, you know, Linden Lab would spend a little bit of time in development of writing some finished code for us in these related things that we're working on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. We've certainly had this come up in various projects where, you know, something is out there and it kind of works, but you don't have a lot of good examples to kind of get you started with it. And you know, honestly, we've had more incidents than I would like of stuff just disappearing from our wiki because of, you know, people don't realize that the links need to be kept live or whatever. So it's yeah, it can be a problem, and you know, I think a lot of it's just kind of a resource problem. We don't have as many people working on that kind of thing as would probably be ideal. But you know, it's about all I can say about that is that we'll look for opportunities to try to you know, put out example stuff as we can. But I agree with you. We don't always have the greatest set of kind of starter information.
Well, and that's, I didn't want, you know, to step on coders' toes, but you know, anytime you're developing something, you know, the guy who's actually got his hands on it and writing code for it and designing it in the first place kind of knows how it could or can work. So it is nice to get some really good example code of some complex stuff. We have lots of simple little scripts, but you know, nothing really all that complex. And it would be nice to get to see some of that complex code coming from the lab that we could all use. You know, a great example too is like the ZHAO. You know, we talk about it all the time because everyone uses it, and that was, you know, something that was made, you know, open source by somebody and just given to the community. Well, you know, at the lab, when you guys write code, it's all open source for us, and that allows for us to just freely spread it. And if we had some really nice code, then the coders in Second Life could take that code and do crazy stuff with it.
Yeah. No, I think, you know, Lex raises a valid point, though, which is that, you know, often the people who are developing this stuff on the Linden side aren't the kind of experts on what the end users or the content creators really want. And so, you know, we can't necessarily write the definitive you know, LSL AO or whatever, because we don't necessarily know all the things that people are going to want to do. A lot of that stuff kind of gets evolved by the community. Once people, you know, get in there and start poking at it, they say, oh, well, you know, it needs this and that and the other thing. So, you know, to the extent that we can, you know, help give people pointers to, you know, how stuff is intended to be used, or to give good examples, you know, I think it's great if we can do that. But I think often it really is kind of a collaborative activity. And I mean, even with Bento, we didn't really know all of the things that we're going to need to be able to do with that project until we started working with the content creators during the development process, and a lot of what we wound up doing really came out of those requests. So again, we can't necessarily kind of create this sort of perfect, fully formed vision and then just kind of hand it off and say, here it is. It's really a much more kind of collaborative process than that.
Well, I can definitely understand what you're saying, but it's definitely something to think about. And I've also even thought about it. Linden Lab wants us to create experiences, and this is the not easy thing to do. But at the same time, Linden Lab has developed a few games. Well, the question I would ask is, why aren't all the code and everything for these games open source and available to everybody? And we should have, 1,000 different versions of whatever game that Linden Lab puts out or tests out or whatever.
Yeah, you open source those games and people start cheating.
What you're going to say, especially with something like Linden Realms, where people can end up actually getting money out of it.
Yeah.
There's already probably problems with people figuring out ways to search for where the gems are and just autopath so that they can go off and watch TV while their avatar's just running around doing everything.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the trade-offs there. Certainly, ideally, we'd like to have more open source stuff out there, but there are cases where, that does increase the potential for abuse. That said, I wasn't involved in the Linden Realms or the other experience development, so I can't say exactly what the motivation was for, the fact that that's not currently open source.
Well, the reason why I kind of bring this up too is, like the way I look at a lot of these worlds, Second Life, Hi-Fi, others, they're very code intense. So if you're not a coder, it's somewhat useless to try and make something complex, and that's where the bottleneck is. Like we have hundreds, thousands of Photoshop experts, lots of mesh experts too, and other things. But where is the bottleneck? The bottleneck is in the coding.
No, there's plenty of good coders out there. You just gotta find them.
There are good coders, but
LSO is also really simple and very easy to learn for anyone, even if they've never coded anything.
Yeah.
Yes, to do simple stuff, it is very easy. But to do something complex like a game or anything like that, I mean, the lab.
It wouldn't actually take that long to learn how to do that stuff, though. And it was quite well documented, and there are.
Yeah, it is very well documented.
These scripts groups are really helpful as well.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want just, coders are content creators too. They're not, you don't want to just have everybody have the same kind of meshes,
Yeah, but that wouldn't happen. Okay, so Linden Lab would put out a mesh or anything else, and what would we do with it? We would do all kinds of crazy things with it. It would you're not putting coders out of business because Linden Lab wrote some code. We take that code and do something crazy with it.
No, it's just sourcing all the code for an entire game. Maybe having sort of if they put out snapshots of this is one way to do this type of thing, or you can get this to interact with that this way. That kind of thing would be good because that would be useful for pretty much everyone. But
Well,
having
think about
open sourcing
think about like the base games.
Okay.
There are only so many different types of games. There's basically 3 or 4 major genres of game types. So if Linden Lab just wrote some basic code for those, and then the whole community would take those and make their own experiences out of it. That's why, I know Linden Lab wants to push the experiences, but I don't see that happening very much, and I think I kind of understand why. It's not that easy.
Well, the experience is really not hard to use. It's just there's not a lot in it at the moment that you use. I mean, besides the database and the teleporting avatars animating.
Yeah, well, so, clearly it would be better if there's more, shared open source code. But on the other hand, we clearly have resource constraints on the Linden side as well. We have coders, but they're doing a lot of other stuff. They're not spending most of their time trying to write, nice, easy to understand LSL for people. And I don't see realistically, I don't see that there's that's likely to change in the near future. Maybe I should throw out the idea that what we really need is some kind of a shared venue where it's easy for anyone to share code, not just Linden Lab, but anybody who wants to participate. Does that make sense? Do you think if something like that existed, it would be useful?
Well, there is a script library on the wiki.
Yeah, there are some examples in the wiki.
As well as
I'm not sure if the wiki qualifies as super easy to use, but it's there, and it does have quite a lot of stuff.
We're going to say pretty much everything you need to make pretty much any game purely within LSL is already on the wiki. But if you're thinking of sort of like a similar thing to sort of this little meeting thing, but for coders, it might be worth getting hold of the Caledon Oxbridge group and seeing if they'd put something on their schedule and advertise through their group. Because I know they do a lot of sort of tutorials for people.
Well, I use other engines too. So, and on Unity, that's one of the great things on Unity is you can just buy a prepackaged game, throw it into your Unity, engine, and throw in some different assets, swap out some assets, and you have a brand new game. Second Life is, 12, 13 years old now, 14 years old, and we don't have that.
Well, it is a lot harder to do.
That kind of thing in Second Life would be phenomenally harder than doing it in...
yeah, you've got so many different objects that would need to have scripts and do it this way.
Plus the fact that Unity is a dedicated build a game here engine rather than a do whatever the hell you want kind of engine. It's not trying to cope with absolutely everything everyone's doing all at once. So there are kind of limitations to what you can do within Second Life as far as that goes. Although maybe some kind of external tool that would be usable like a land editor to do it might be doable.
Unity's not limited to 64K.
Yeah, well, the size of scripts is definitely an issue if you're trying to do something very complicated.
Ever a chance of getting that raised?
I don't know. I mean, we have raised various other limits in the past, but don't know what the prospects would be for scripts in particular.
Well, it's just some thoughts I had, and when I think about like getting more people into Second Life, it's about having stuff for them to do and more games and more things that they're familiar with. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about. How do we get more games? How do we get more things for people to do?
It definitely would be nice to have more things to actually do, because it would bridge that gap between MMO and virtual world, where you have so many options but no guidance. It would kind of give you that little bit of guidance here and there that would sort of increase the chances of people likely to come in and have fun and stick around.
And I think NPCs or animated meshes is a step in the right direction for that too.
Oh yeah, animated meshes, if you can do NPCs, that'll be awesome. Quite a lot of fun things you can do with that.
All right, had a lot of discussion going here. If I missed anybody's question, you may want to repeat it. Yeah, no, I don't know when we'll have Project Viewer out. Right now I'm still at the stage of we're poking around in corners of the code that, nobody's tried to do anything with for a while, and so sometimes you try to change something and it works fine, and sometimes you find some weird surprise that you have to deal with. So, when you're in that mode, it's very hard to predict how long it's going to take to get beyond it. So far I think things have gone reasonably smoothly, but there's a fair number of kind of corners that we haven't poked in yet. So, all I can say is, once we feel like we have something that's useful and sufficiently stable, we'll look to put a Project Viewer out.
Hey guys, you mind if I butt in here? I don't create items in Second Life, I just design sims. But the reason they won't implement more games and more things for people to do is because LSL is based on really old coding. And it doesn't utilize your PC to its full extension. Whereas like other games that are similar years old, let's say World of Warcraft, Lord of the Rings, and things like that, they've been upgraded to use multi-core CPUs and also to use your GPUs a lot more better. They're better at extending the hardware and using the hardware, whereas LSL is still mostly CPU based. So no matter how good of a graphics card you have, how powerful it is, how much system RAM you have, if LSL is only using one CPU core and maximum up to 2, even if you have an 8-core CPU, it's going to limit what you can do in here. And it's going to limit the experiences you can give to the end user that uses the program. Now, as far as other games, CSGO and things like that, which I have designed for, scripted for, yeah, it is server-side, but the way it's implemented, the way it uses the net framework for Windows is very, very outdated.
Yeah, LSL isn't running on your computer, though. It's running on
Exactly.
London Labs computer.
Exactly, but the way they implemented the coding to use multiple cores is very ancient. It's still running off old coding that was meant for dual-core processors and things like that. It's not meant for the newers.
Well, it is mono.
Yeah, it is, and they could update it. Instead of working on a new system, which I think is going to completely fail, they need to upgrade this one. That way you can keep the player base, because if it keeps going the way it's going, people are going to eventually leave. hardware is getting better, but Second Life incrementally is getting a little bit better, but not at the pace it should be going. And they make millions a year. They're not broke. It's not that they don't have the money. No, I'm talking about Second Life itself. They could make it a lot better experience. Upgrade the servers to more common hardware that's used these days for MMOs and things like that. They could. They have millions stockpile. How do you think they stuck 14 million in the new Project Viewer and Sanzar? They're not broke. Exactly. Well, you can't. All right. Well, let's say you go to an office and they give you 5 wrenches to fix a car, and you're missing the metric system wrenches. No matter how many times you pull with that 7/8, you're not going to fix it. You got to have the right tools. And as far as us making SL better, they have to upgrade it and implement some more modern technology into it. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You can only do so much with the tools they give you.
Yeah, well, we're trying to improve what we can. I can promise you from experience that everybody at the company is busy, and we're not just lying around rolling in enormous piles of money. But
No, I know that.
obviously, beyond that, there's always going to be questions about priorities, and we have a very impassioned community that has a lot of different perspectives on that.
I still don't think anyone's actually kind of maxed out the sort of activity game potential of what SL can handle anyway, really. At least not that I found.
But I mean, it would be nice to be able to do like a real MMO experience, Like build like a little mini sim with like whole RPG built inside of it that you don't have to wait 10 seconds for whatever object you're interacting with to reply to you.
Well, there are
It'd be
things like that.
nice.
There are things like that.
I make one of those things, so we're on dozens of sims.
Yeah, there's one that I was working on.
Yeah, that's what I'm speaking about performance. It'd be a lot better, if it could handle a lot more. There's also things that people who make objects can take into account. Like the other day, I went and bought a brand new mesh house. They had a damn coffee cup with a 1024 texture on it. I'm like, why on a coffee cup? Could simply put a 512. Nobody's going to zoom that close on a coffee cup.
The reason everybody puts 1024 textures on everything is because we don't allow them to put 2048 textures on everything.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
I had a question, if you could follow up for me. I know you mentioned at the beginning that to keep the content protection talk in the support framework, I was just wondering, were you referring to even the no copy transfer loophole that's in all the viewers, or is that just in the copy bot? Were you just talking about the copy bot side of things?
I mean, really, I was referring to the kind of policy discussions we were having last week about how these kinds of things are enforced, and that's completely a support side thing. If there's bugs that are getting exploited that we're not aware of, or that sort of thing, then yeah, definitely let us know. It's always good to have JIRAs for that sort of thing.
I mean, as far as I know, that bug has been going on for over a year. The no copy marketplace. I don't know if it has a name. Right. I mean, I don't want to go into too much explanation of it. I can try to find it.
Yeah, I mean, if there's issues that we don't that we're not already aware of, that we don't have JIRAs for, if it's something that's that's confidential, you can that you wouldn't want to put in a public facing JIRA, then you can certainly drop us a line about that. You can just PM me or whatever.
But I mean,
but
and SL, you don't even have to use CopyBot to rip objects or scripts. With the way they listed, the way sound channels and script channels are listed in the LSL, you can write scripts to listen for scripts, and you can listen for whenever objects are being sent textures, and you can snag the texture UUID and use it on whatever you want. They left things way too insecure, especially the voice servers, which you can just ping somebody's MAC address automatically.
Yeah, I'm just.
No, copybots can't steal scripts, but you can steal scripts with something else. I guarantee you. I mean, it's really bad. Anything in this game can be stolen because the way they designed it, the way they the way things interact, the way they talk on specific channels. It's really easy. I'm not going to say how to do it because I personally don't do it, but I've showed people on my own objects I built that I can steal anything I want from myself. Even when they're locked with no mod, no copy. You can jack it. It's not detectable. Anything above the listening channel 300 is really hard to digest for listener scripts to listen for when people are jacking your ship. Anything above 300. If you're going to steal something, do it on a channel above 300. Damn near impossible for anybody to see it.
Well, you can't steal scripts on channels. That's just their message.
No, but you can make your scripts work on those channels. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Channels are a factor if you're listening between two objects. The way you detect with somebody whenever they're copybotting your objects, if you're not on your sim, you have a prim on your sim that listens for specific coding that goes on between scripts when they talk. And it listens. And the reason I know is because I'm friends with somebody who designs other viewers that are used to crash sims because he's an MC. And he sent me a folder one time with all the exploits as of working 2017. He's like, looky. And I'm like, bro, why are you sending me this? I don't want this. I enjoy SL the way it is. He's like, well, in case anybody ever bothers you. So, I mean, you can. On the encryption side of SL, it's very wide open. And it's very easy to exploit.
All right. Well, as I say, I would definitely encourage people to file JIRAs. It's great if we know about this stuff. But
I sent a ticket in the Limit Labs and talked to a rep on the phone. I even sent them a copy of the email. They said, thanks for that, but right now we're not looking into making things more secure. We're more focused on the experience for the user. I sent them a whole copy of everything he sent me, all the scripts he runs and everything, and Linden Labs basically told me to go screw yourself and we're not interested. Lack of better words. Yes. I mean, maybe if I was a major, builder in SL or very well known, maybe they would pay attention.
All right. Well, we are at time for this week, so we should probably wrap it up. Yeah, I can't speak to the history of whatever interactions you've already had. I would say that we're definitely interested in JIRAs about any of this stuff, and if it already exists, if you want to just PM me with a link, I'd be happy to take a look at it. All right. Well, have a good week, all, and we will see you. I think we have a meeting next week. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, all. Catch you later.
Thanks, Beer.
Well, it was nice meeting all of y'all. Matter of fact, I'll compile quite a few of the emails that I've been sent about things like that. And if one of y'all are the main person who sets up these meetings, I can forward it to you.
The main person who sets up these meetings is Veer.
Oh crap! I didn't know. I saw you streaming and I came on over.
Yeah, well, this is
Zap, definitely please
probably
come
the-
back. Definitely please come back and please,
Well, I will. The only reason I don't bring anything in SL is because I can't get it low enough polygon to bring in. And Jesus Christ, I need some awesome things in Blender, but I have no idea to make it super low poly. I tried and failed. Last thing I built had 2 million faces, and SL was like, nope. Not even as a DAE, you're not bringing it in. And I wept quietly.
Yeah,
and drank
that's
a
too
couple.
high. But you have to think low poly.
Why did you need 2 million faces?
Yeah,
Because I
Oh.
build like, well, I build CGI for World of Warcraft and Machinimas and stuff like that. And I had models from there that were HD, and I was like, oh, cool, I can bring them, I can change them up a little bit and bring them in and be cool. And Second Life was like, it showed it as a green check mark on bringing in. But once it said, whatever it was, I think it was complexity, it was like, nope, big red X, not happening.
World of Warcraft wouldn't have a 2 million poly model in it.
It does when you're doing CGI.
Yeah, this is real time though. You got to think game, not CGI.
I know.
All
I'm
movie
trying to get
models
used to
are
it.
way bigger than a normal game model. That's for
Oh my god. I downloaded the model for the World of Warcraft ship that they used for their Legion cinematic. Jesus Christ, 1.3 billion faces on two
why they-
pieces of
That's why they render them on render farms and not a single GPU.
It took me an hour and a half to load it. And then every time I'd swap views, it'd take it 20 minutes to change the view on the camera. The system would lock up till it was done changing camera angles.
At that point, it honestly sounds like you're better off just like taking some
Yeah.
screenshots, different angles, and then rebuilding it entirely from scratch.
Yeah, this is not a movie.